Here on the Locked On Podcast Network, we got a crossover episode for you today. Locked On Hoosiers, Locked On UCLA, and talking a little bit. Ooh, nope, just kidding. How about football today for the Hoosiers and the Bruins? I am Jacob Goins. Alongside me is Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer from Locked On UCLA. Man, we are talking football to start the show today. It may be a little different, but our teams are getting after it this weekend at the Rose Bowl.
Yeah, I thought it would be basketball season when we'd start getting nasty with each other, Jacob. But now I guess football season. With the Locked On Big Ten Squad episode, it's getting nasty, everybody, for this game. So I'm excited.
Yeah, we have so much fun on those episodes, and everybody gets together. They're talking a little smack, and you and I decided to go a little one-on-one because it's the Hoosiers and the Bruins this weekend out in LA, Indiana, opening up their Big Ten schedule along with UCLA. And you guys have one less game than we do, and it wasn't the prettiest of games in that opener. Tell the folks if they don't already know about UCLA and their 1-0 record.
All right. So for UCLA fans, you've listened to this, you've seen it for 2 weeks. We've been waiting. The week 2 bye was the worst thing to wait and see about this team because I just don't know. We know with the Deshaun Foster, he couldn't speak at the whole conference. We don't know what the offense, the defensive stars left, right? But in week 1, the defense was the star of the team, and it was the offense that could not run the ball with the big star-studded name Eric Bieniemy as the offensive coordinator. And the redshirt senior quarterback Garbers, who stole the starting job at the end of the year last year after beginning the season with it, he was supposed to be the star with the receiver room that we, in our rose-colored lenses, think could challenge Ohio State's receiver room in UCLA's locker room. Is that the case? I'm not entirely sure. So what we expected to be the lead was actually led by the defense, and we don't really know how good Hawaii is. So it's just ugly on all fronts. It's either bad week 1 or UCLA could be 1-11. And we won't really know until they play the Hoosiers.
And I'll give you our perspective from it. Indiana fans are excited. We are pumped up because of a 2-0 start. Now, yes, it is against two teams that are not very good. We added on to a 25-game losing streak for an opponent last week. We understand what the circumstances have been, but the whole mindset of it's just another trip, it's a, business trip, whatever that Kurt Cignetti has talked about, head coach of the Hoosiers, he's got people fired up a little bit. And I think confident is the word we've continued to use on Locked On Hoosiers because with just so many question marks with UCLA because of the one game and it wasn't good at that, we just don't know what we're going to see out of UCLA. And Indiana broke a record offensively that hasn't been done since 1901 in terms of Indiana football. So is there a confidence for you guys, or is it more of like I guess we'll find out?
What you just said is exactly how we're all feeling. Well, we're going to find out. That is exactly how I think we're all feeling. There is nothing I could look from practice, read, think. They just have to strap the pads on, get ready to go, and literally play from a UCLA perspective, they just got to play the game. And we will know if they can get the job done or if they can't. And it's very frustrating because, whether it's in the parking lot or the Rose Bowl, we just need to let this game happen because you've got the most, I think I said this on the squad episode, the most quotable head coach versus the unquotable. And it's different styles, right? You've got the coach who's going to come into the iconic Rose Bowl. I don't care where we're playing. And Deshaun Foster's already come out and said, when they go to these big venues like LSU, when they go to Penn State, which are expected to be 100,000 fans rocking, we're going to let them get their feet wet, take pictures, video it, be new school-like approach. So it's almost old school versus new school, right? You've got run the ball physical, at least the first couple of games for Indiana, and UCLA looking for an identity, but a more enthusiastic approach. That's kind of what we're battling here in week 3.
And for Indiana, sure, we've had offensive explosions and the defense has played well, but we haven't gone up against Big Ten talent. And yes, it's weird to keep saying Big Ten for you guys. I know it's still weird. It's a little different, but man, I love this opening matchup because while it'll fly under the radar for those outside of the conference, I feel like maybe not a ton of people will watch this on Saturday night. We will. And people inside the conference, you could list this as a top 3 game this week. Don't you think, Zach?
This is a game for both teams that could decide the fate between bowl season or not. I think the Hoosiers, they could still navigate around this with an L and get to a bowl game, but UCLA has to win this game, or else you don't really look at many games on the schedule and think, oh, How are they underdogs at home in a game where I would have thought 2 years ago, regardless of who's coaching, UCLA should be favored in the Rose Bowl when they're playing Indiana? That's just how it is kind of baked to be, right? I would think UCLA is probably not favored at Indiana, but the way it's turned in this last 2 weeks, it's just embarrassing a little bit. And it's more about finding an identity. That's the real thing. And there really isn't much in this weird offseason conference realignment age between now the Hoosiers and Bruins in a conference matchup.
And I'll admit too, I was not expecting Indiana to be favored in this game, even with the results of the first two. Like, this doesn't happen. Indiana doesn't go on the road in the conference and be favored. I don't care if it's Northwestern. Like, that just normally doesn't happen for us. But here we are, and it's like something's wrong here. If Vegas knows something maybe that we don't, I have no idea. But to speak to your point there, trying to figure things out, because I think Indiana's still trying to figure things out. Obviously, UCLA. I mean, typically, though, conference games are not where you're trying to learn about yourself. You're trying to go in and win a football game.
Yeah, this is for the early bye, too. This is the year where there's two byes baked into his schedule. UCLA's got so much travel to learn so much after one game and so little for another. And with it being a new opponent, like, this isn't like UCLA's playing, going to go play ASU. This isn't Indiana going to play, as you mentioned, Northwestern. This is something like, oh, we don't really know these guys. And these are new head coaches, quite a few new players on various sides of the football for both teams, all still trying to figure it out. This is just going to be a weird game where, honestly, the better team at the end of the year might not actually win this football game. That's what could be extra funny, right? That's how it could be.
Yeah, and I think you're not far off from that. And look, Craig from Locked On Big Ten, who controls all of us in the crossover in the Big Ten squad, he says we're counting this as a Rose Bowl appearance. So I don't know if everybody's going to allow us to do that, but man, a week 2 bye, that's disgusting. Like, that's actually gross. I would hate that as a player, as a coach, as a fan. I mean, that had to have been miserable. You just sit around, you're like, what the heck do we do now?
As a podcast host, having to talk about that game for 2 weeks
Brutal.
and just sit on it and just wait. Like, Indiana, it just, it couldn't come soon enough. It could not come soon enough. And then it gets crazy because then you got LSU, you host Oregon. We don't really know about Oregon right now. You got Penn State on the road. That's all after Indiana for UCLA. So this is a game with UCLA not favored. They won't possibly be favored until the middle of October against Minnesota when they come to the Rose Bowl. That's the next game UCLA could be favored. And if they're not getting favored against Indiana, there's a possibility if UCLA somehow falters in this game, they might not be favored till November or never again for the rest of the season. That is where it's looking like for the Bruins if they don't show up in this game.
Locked On UCLA fans praying for a win, and Indiana fans are looking to build something new under new head coach Curt Cignetti. We'll talk about our expectations and predictions. What has to happen for the Hoosiers to win and what has to happen for UCLA to win? We'll have that coming up for you next here on a crossover edition of Locked On Hoosiers and Locked On UCLA. Today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to take your car and make it the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay's Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. I tell you all the time that my dad, a small business owner, 3 small businesses actually, he uses LinkedIn for all of his different job openings. And what's great about LinkedIn is it's not just another job board. It's even good for people that may not be in the job hunt right now, but would be open to the perfect role. And in any given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So it's simple. If you're not using LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. You can join over 2.5 million small businesses that use LinkedIn for hiring right now. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Back here for the crossover edition of Locked On Hoosiers and Locked On UCLA. I'm Jacob Goins, joined by Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer, talking Hoosiers and Bruins, Indiana and UCLA football at the Rose Bowl. And so for you guys, for UCLA, what does it take for you to get a victory in this game at home as an underdog against Indiana? What has to go well for you guys?
I don't know. You just said so many weird things. At home, Indiana conference underdog. Just so many things going through my mind right now. First things first. I think this game will largely be won by the trenches. All right. I think I remember reading for UCLA, obviously, their offensive line was poor last year, and that was the big concern this year. The Bruins are down a starting tackle in game 1 and another starting tackle on the other side, Ruben Unije, for half the game in game 1. Their guards didn't play well. They shifted a player over to center. It did not look good. If you look at the rushing numbers, you take away Garbers, who is not a true dual threat quarterback. Those running numbers are awful. And then when you put them next to Indiana's 2 weak running numbers, right? The rushing numbers, ugly. So UCLA needs to establish a running game. If they can't get like 75 yards rushing without the help of a quarterback, then that's going to be a lot on the arm of Ethan Garbers, who made some pretty terrible decisions in week 1 with an offensive line that's still somewhat patchwork. If the Bruins can protect their quarterback, he makes better decisions, which he should. He's an old veteran quarterback, although the question and concern heading in from the offseason was the understanding of the offense when transitioning from Chip Kelly into Eric Bieniemy's offense, very different, not run heavy. Eric Bieniemy, when he was coaching with the Commanders were one of the least running teams in the NFL. And then you bring it to UCLA, they did not have success in week 1. Okay, how do they fix that in week 3? Do they simplify the offense? I don't know those answers. Make better decisions in the red zone because the Bruins can make field goals. That couldn't be said for a week before. And then the big thing is the defense looked better than advertised. What can they do against what looks to be a balanced offensive attack for you guys, Jacob?
Yeah, it seems to be balanced as of right now, but as I've continued to say, I'm so curious on how we react and how we respond when ultimately we're punched in the mouth, right? By a legitimate football team in UCLA. I know you guys are worried about the schedule, and rightfully so. It's absolutely brutal. But UCLA has talent on both sides of the ball. So what happens if UCLA comes out and scores on their opening drive? What happens if they go up by 2 scores? What happens if Indiana can't run the ball or we can't throw or we have an early turnover? Like, for me, that's what I look for, is any sort of adversity, because we just haven't had a whole lot so far this year. And I'm looking for that in this game on Saturday. It's at night. It's going to be on TV. People are going to tune in. And so how do we respond? How can we really see for the first time Curt Cignetti coaching this Indiana team in a game where, yeah, you're going to have to fight and play for 4 quarters, which we haven't had to do so far. And if we can have a balanced running attack and let Indiana throw it around a little bit, I think we'll be okay with Curtis Rourke, who has proven he can sling it and he can deliver it when he wants to. But if we can't do something, if UCLA finds a way to make Indiana uncomfortable, that's going to be really the thing that I look for, including how we play on the road in front of what type of crowd there at UCLA, man.
Type of crowd. I've been hearing. I was at the game, the non-COVID affected game in 22 when they played Bowling Green.
Sure.
1,000,000 degrees. Nobody was in the stadium. They announced the amount of people who bought tickets. Who knows? I don't actually know how many. I've read the LA Times article about everybody's largest contingent, whether it's Minnesota, whether it is Iowa, and of course, Indiana. Their largest traveling contingent is going to the game that will be happening at the Rose Bowl. That's been research, I think the great Ben Bolch has done for the LA Times. So there will be road fans yelling. I just wonder what's the optimism after a kind of weak showing. You get a taste of it, and then you don't have another look at it for 2 weeks. I'd like to say it can beat the Chip Kelly opener, which wasn't a sellout back in 2018. I remember being at that one when the Bruins underperformed against Cincinnati in 18. I just don't have a pulse about what the vibe will be, next week. I know Iowa's going to pack the stadium. I know Minnesota might bring droves. I'm not sure what UCLA Indiana does on a Saturday in Southern California with gorgeous weather after it being scorching. So the weather will be perfect. It'll look great on TV. The crowd, I can't multiply myself 15 million times. My heart can't beat every seat. There might be tarps. I still don't know. I hope there's not. But there will be hopefully 1,000 students standing behind the Indiana bench. It's a one-of-its-kind thing in the Rose Bowl. You'll see if Indiana players complain about noisy students behind the UCLA or behind their bench, it's a new thing the Bruins installed at the Rose Bowl. The funny thing is, the UCLA students aren't back in school yet. So,
Really?
Yeah, they don't go back until like another week.
Oh my gosh. They don't go back till like middle of September. That'd be a dream growing up. Oh my goodness.
They're on the quarter system. They don't get out till mid to late June.
Oh, that's terrible. Apologies. Are you a UCLA grad yourself?
No, I am not. But the thing is, that's something that's never really brought in. Like week 1, 2, or 3, those home UCLA games are not like those don't have students. Beyond the fact that they have to travel. I think the traveling to Pasadena is overblown. But, the students aren't there for the first 3 weeks of the college football season, right? This is week 3, and they're not in session. And if they're 2-2, the UCLA is not going to be, but they don't have a lot of optimism. They're not going to show up till the SC game, right? And then it might be invaded by road fans. So that's the big thing about the crowd.
Interesting. I'll be honest, I didn't know all that. So maybe that's advantage Indiana on the road, depending on how many fans we send out from Bloomington all the way out to Los Angeles, California. Excited for that. All right, Zach, your prediction, if you have to put it on right now, Indiana, UCLA, who wins and why?
If you watch the confidence in the coaches talking, you're going to say Indiana. If you're going to look at the numbers, you're going to say Indiana. If you're going to say who's played clean football, Indiana showcased it more. And I believe whatever Indiana made, I was looking at numbers. I think they had a lot of penalties week 1, right? You guys had quite a few penalties week 1. That was cleaned up in week 2. And there's not a lot of ways to look better against a terrible team, but that's a big impressive thing going into week 2 for the Hoosiers. UCLA hasn't had that opportunity to showcase anything clean. Everything leans what the odds say. Indiana +3, 2.5, whatever number you're getting. I still say UCLA 2017. They can make their field goals. That wasn't something they could do last year under Chip Kelly. That's why the offense would sputter at times. Now, if they can't figure it out, there's totally a path for Indiana to win this game. Absolutely. I just say UCLA 2017, and hopefully we just got worried for nothing.
Okay. I think I said 28-17 Indiana on our Locked On Big Ten squad, and I think that could happen. Will it come back to bite me because I'm picking Indiana in a game where they normally don't win in the past and we haven't seen anything against real competition? Maybe. I may get burned. It may be. I don't know. But I'm going to buy into the confidence for now. I'll drink the Kool-Aid, as they say, until they give me a reason not to. I just think with a balanced offensive attack, an experienced defensive front, and really an experienced linebacker core as well, with Aiden Fisher leading the way for the Hoosiers, I'm going to take Indiana on the road at the Rose Bowl. Start 3-0, 1-0 in Big Ten play. Really, really excited for this game on Saturday night between UCLA and Indiana. And while it's fun to talk football, Zach, I think we should talk a little basketball, too, with the season right around the corner. We'll have that coming up for you guys in the final segment right here on the crossover of Locked On Hoosiers and Locked On UCLA. Today's episode is brought to you by Factor meals. Fuel up with Factor's no prep, no mess meals. I've eaten Factor meals all this week. I got my order in on Monday. I've been eating them for lunch. I'm eating them for dinner, and they're all fantastic. I had pork tenderloin the other night. It was amazing. I had shrimp. I've had chicken. You can get any sort of meals that you want with Factor. You can meet your wellness goals thanks to the menu of chef-crafted meals with options like Calorie Smart, which is what I do. You can go keto, protein, whatever that you want to do. With 35 different meals and more than 60 add-ons to choose from every week, you'll always have new flavors to explore. And you can make your day delicious from breakfast to dessert. Stay fueled with easy, nutritious options. And I also branched out a little bit. Got some protein shakes, chocolate and vanilla. They're phenomenal. I drink them during the day, gets me ready to go, and keeps me going really in the afternoons. And so you can be like us, all right? Enjoy effortless support for your lifestyle. Choose from 6 menu preferences to help you manage calories, maximize protein intake, avoid meat, or simply just eat a well-balanced meal. Head to factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 and use that code LockedOnCollege50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. That's code LockedOnCollege50 at factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month while your subscription is active with Factor Meals. All right, let's talk a little basketball, Zach, as we've got Hoosiers and Bruins, Indiana, UCLA, two of the most historic brands in the game of college basketball. And while we don't want to wish football season away, it's hard to keep basketball out of the conversation with these two schools. And here's what's exciting. These two teams are going to be playing. I hate that it's not going to be 1-1, but we get to see you guys come to Assembly Hall. Your thoughts on UCLA traveling to Bloomington this season?
I think it's good. UCLA, they'll have their fair share of home games. They've got quite a few non-conference games. I think it's better to go in an iconic college gym and go play. And I think it makes more sense to see UCLA over there in Indiana. The blue and the red just clash so nicely.
Yeah.
And the histories go so well together. I'm excited for that game. And it's fun to say, Bruins going to Assembly Hall. It doesn't have the same ring as Indiana coming to Pauley Pavilion. It's a good venue, but Assembly Hall is much cooler.
Assembly Hall is great, man. It really is, and it's one of the shrines of college basketball, and just so excited to have new jerseys, new teams coming in, whether it's UCLA or Washington, Oregon, right, and USC over the next handful of years, and us to get to make those trips as well. And for your UCLA folks, in case they didn't know, Indiana brought in the top-ranked transfer portal class this offseason. They were disappointing last year, missing out on the NCAA tournament, something that is not acceptable here in Bloomington. And from the likes of Umar Ballo, you bring him in as the top center. You've got two guards from the former Pac-12, Stanford and Washington State. This team is loaded this year, and the expectations are extremely high in Bloomington for Mike Woodson, who, again, missed the tournament last year. That's not okay over here in Bloomington, Zach. We don't like missing the NCAA tournament.
Okay, if I had a chance, I'd just copy and paste exactly what you said, dub it with AI and my voice, and then put like 10th or whatever ranked transfer class UCLA is, because that's the exact same thing UCLA had. Mick Cronin went heavy freshman last year, and then all of a sudden it went downhill. All he did was complain about the lack of NIL support, the inability to go get guys in the portal, went after international freshmen. A lot of those didn't pan out. We've seen Baneke leave. We've saw Feeble leave. At least 3 or 4 off the top of my head of the international freshmen have left. And so did their big director of international scouting. So then they pivoted to the portal. And Cronin, you know, with all due respect to Indiana, I'd like to say the Bruins did their fair share to win the portal as well.
Okay.
And Wolf, I know they don't have the number 1 ranked class. They didn't steal the top players in the Pac-12. But UCLA, what they're trying to do is recreate the team from 2 years ago. The team that won the Pac-12 that had Jalen Clark. All Mick Cronin has said is that Kobe Johnson, former USC Trojan captain, is going to come in. He's going to start. He is the same player, not the same, but similar in guarding many players. He's got his guy who can finish in the paint, made it to the tournament, William Kyle III. his Swiss Army knife, and Eric Daly Jr. I'm not going to bore you with all the names. If you're Hoosier fans, UCLA fans know them, but there's 6 transfers who are all very good for a UCLA team that could not score. A sneaky good freshman who signed early in Eric Freeney. At the last second, getting all that, then Mick Cronin finally stole McDonald's All-American. That was the last signee of his 7-man, then 8-man class. And before the scholarships increased to 15, UCLA is completely funding a spot by NIL. That's what the Bruins have in terms of stacked talent, top to bottom. Everybody's on their scholarship, plus 1 funded by NIL. So an Indiana team that's coming ready to go, a frustrated Cronin and UCLA squad. These are 2 fan bases that are like, we sucked and we had to sit this out last year. And the coaches hit it hard, and it should be very fun this year in Big Ten play.
It should. You're absolutely right. And look, to be honest with you, being a podcast host, you mentioned this earlier, and having to watch all of our other friends at Locked On do shows during the tournament, that was miserable. It was horrible. We had recruiting. It was like, oh, okay, we can just, we can start recruiting the portal earlier. No, to heck with that. We want to play in the NCAA tournament. For UCLA, just for Hoosier fans updates, their 3 home and away games, Oregon, USC, and Washington. Makes sense, right? It just kind of to keep it easy for the new guys. And for Indiana, our 3 games, home and away, Ohio State, Penn State, and then Purdue. If you remember, we got swept by Penn State last year. That's not cool. That's not okay. And not just missing the tournament, losing to horrific teams. Nebraska lit us up last year. Wasn't a whole lot of fun, but we do return Malik Renew, who was a very good power forward, one of the best in the Big Ten. You do lose Khalil Ware to the NBA, but he was replaced with Umar Ballo. And Mackenzie Mbako is back, who was one of the best freshmen a year ago, hoping for the sophomore surge. Expectations for us here, I've said not just make the tournament, we got to make a run, Zach. Indiana's got to make a run. I'm seeing Sweet 16. How you guys feeling in Los Angeles in terms of a basketball run this season?
Oh, I'm going to come off cocky and brash. Sometimes, as we see our dear friend Spencer McLaughlin,
of
good old Locked On College Football and Locked On Ducks, he feels high and mighty. I'm feeling high and mighty about this team. Every weakness Mick Cronin addressed in the offseason. And I'm not saying they're going to win the Big Ten, and you really don't have to win the conference nowadays and super conference to make it deep. UCLA's Final Four run, they barely made the tournament. They're arguably the last team in and beat now former/current Big Ten rival, I guess, in Michigan State back in 21 in the bubble tournament.
Right.
So I've said what UCLA needs to do. They need Elite 8 Final Four. This team has too much talent, works really well with what Mick Cronin has put together. A Sweet 16, like he's done that, right? He did that with his team 2 years ago. They were hurt. Bona and Clark were out that year. So Bona was hurt, Pac-12 Freshman of the Year, National Defensive Player of the Year. Those guys were out when they – and I've said if they don't get hurt, we don't maybe see a UConn mini dynasty these last 2 years. UCLA doesn't do anything last year, but 2 years ago would have been a super battle in the Elite 8 because I think UCLA gets past Gonzaga if they're healthy. Now that's okay. UConn, Dan Hurley, cool. They're the kings. We'll leave them be. But the Bruins have recreated or tried to with this year. Now they Final Four national champion. That's all the hope. But this team will be good, and they should put forth a competitive game in Assembly Hall and in all Big Ten arenas this year. If they don't, I'm going to flip the phone every day because that would just be brutal. They're too good not to.
I'm glad we have somebody to blame for the UConn, domination that's happened in college basketball. So take note, everybody. UCLA, they are the ones to blame for UConn winning back-to-back, possibly to back championships. I mean, they just keep doing it. Between recruiting in high school and transfer portal, they don't look like they're going anywhere. Talks of them going to the Big 12, I don't know. It's crazy stuff happening around college basketball. It can't get here soon enough. Don't want to wish away football, but basketball is right around the corner as well. Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer from Locked On UCLA. Check him out. Be sure you become an everydayer there. Same thing with Locked On Hoosiers with myself, Jacob Goins. Zach, always a pleasure, my man. Great to have a crossover episode. And look, may the best team win on Saturday. Hoosiers and Bruins from the Rose Bowl. Appreciate your time today, man.
Thank you for having me, Jacob. Let's not cry too hard, whoever loses, because we'll have such devastated fan bases one way or the other. But I can't wait for basketball season, but let's sell it first on the football field.